There's value in your website. There's value in the domain names that you own. There's value in your brand presence. So for us, it's more natural that ownership should be across the board, but we've seen domains held hostage by vendors. The business owner, though, should have asked the right questions ahead of time.
Infrastructure assets that becomes a part of your transition price. The transition strategist, we do a lot of long haul strategies for people to walk through. What do they have to do in order to prepare and become exit ready?
Welcome to the Business Transition Roadmap. My name is Elizabeth Ledoux, and through my years, I have seen how communities thrive when business succession and transition are done well. Me and my team at the Transition Strategists have been helping business owners develop and implement transition strategies for over 30 years. And on this show, we want to help you by giving you the roadmap to a healthy business transition. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Transition Roadmap. I am thrilled today to have Paige Wiese with us. She is the founder and the CEO of Tree Ring Digital. And today we're going to talk a little bit about digital assets, how to get your digital assets in order before you go through a sale or go through succession. It's a really, really important topic. And Paige, being the founder and the CEO of this full service digital agency, this conversation and her work goes way beyond just building a pretty website or doing something like that. This is really about your digital assets and how do you keep those, protect them, and handle them going forward into a sale or a succession situation. So Paige, welcome. And just if you can tell us a little bit about you and, the founding of Tree Ring Digital.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. With Tree Ring Digital, I started it just doing freelance website design and was looking for a way to make money at the time. I was 23 and having some health issues, so trying to figure out what I could do from home. Mind you, this was pre-Zoom, pre-digital nomad, anything like that. We're trying to find a work from home job was much harder and a struggle for sure. So I started teaching myself website design and development. A lot of trial and error along the way there, and then moving into more of a marketing side with clients hearing this isn't working, or we really just turned into, I have questions, can you help? And I really enjoyed that process of troubleshooting. So I think that that's something we've really carried through the whole life cycle of the company, is moving into even just yes, let's figure out what that question means. Let's dive deeper into why you got that email instead of being oh, that falls outside of our wheelhouse. It's, we don't do this or that service, but instead, it's relevant. It's important to you, and we're in charge of your digital presence. So let's take a look at that.
Absolutely. I'm just curious, how'd you come up with your name?
Yeah.
What's the meaning behind that?
The Tree Ring Digital, it represents the tree rings, how they represent growth, longevity, uniqueness. So really that relationship that we're wanting to build with our clients instead of so transactional. All of our services are unique and tailored to the customer and the business, as we know that it shouldn't be so cookie cutter, and just, looking for the growth out of it all. So that's really where the inspiration for Tree Ring Digital came from.
That's really cool. So just to get people oriented a little bit, when you talk about digital assets, what goes into that bucket, right? What should owners be thinking about, or successors?
Yeah, I think digital assets is something right off the bat, don't really entirely know what that means. I think even there's a lot of people that are still navigating that there is a digital side that can be an asset. They're so focused on the tangibles, the finances, all of that, but they're really not looking at, there's value in your website. There's value in the domain names that you own. There's value in your brand presence. There's value in your Google reviews and your social media profiles. And so when it comes to exiting or succession, how do we start putting a value on what that looks like? And how do we really protect and safeguard those digital assets instead of, all right, well, the deal happened. Somewhere in the legal paperwork, it says that the domain, the hosting, whatever is going to transfer ownership. But what does that really look like? And how do we start to break down the email accounts? Do you have the right compliance and ADA and privacy policies and stuff in place? Or is that going to be something when you get to the deal during due diligence that's going to come up, and now we've got unexpected fees going to the deal, or things that start to give them opportunities to negotiate the price And obviously, when we get that far in, we don't really want to see that come up.
Right. And so, just to get a little bit of emotion or some framework around some things, what are some of the things that you see that are like, oh no moments as a business owner might walk into or walk through this, that we can start there? And then we'll talk a little bit about how some of the shifts can happen to get rid of or mitigate some of those oh no moments. So what are some of your favorites and the most likely that we might see?
Yeah, some of the oh no moments are going to be the, hey, my employees got that handled, or someone else set that up, or even a previous, business owner set it up and they just look at it as, I've got a credit card on file. It'll auto renew. It'll be fine. And then all of a sudden something goes wrong and it's the panic call that we get, and we have to start, understanding why is this happening? Where is the root of it? Because your email is going down doesn't just mean your emails went down. It could also be attached to, maybe it's no longer connected to your website. Maybe it's, your domain name is actually what's down. So there's a lot more diagnosis that goes into it than just, okay, let's fix this little issue that's going on. So a big oh no is, I feel owners of the company have really been stepping back and letting others, whether it be a vendor, an employee, someone else on their team, a virtual assistant that they've hired, stepping in and saying, I know I need to delegate. We're told to delegate as a leader, right? But they're not asking the question back and saying, now, how do I have ownership? How do I make sure that I'm the one who can log in should anything happen for any reason? And I think the other side of that is, other oh no's are, yeah, I've got the password. It's in my email. My web developer sent that to me a couple of years ago. I know I can find it if I had to. It's not the model we're looking for. Like, it's great that it's someplace, but it should be something you can easily access, just like that. If your Facebook profile you can't log in, it shouldn't have to be a 20, 34 day, whatever turnaround to get logged in and back into it all. That should be something you should have ownership to. And so we see just a lot of these times where they think that it's in a good spot, but haven't really put in the policies and procedures of how to safeguard that.
Yeah. I can only imagine just how crazy that would be in a transition, especially if something happens to the owner, right? And they're unprepared. But even in a strategized, intentional roadmap, getting these digital assets so that you really have your arms around them and have knowledge about that asset. We're moving so quickly into AI and into online, and people are using that data at such a high rate. It is a big part of your infrastructure these days.
It's more so than people think. I know, back in the day and more traditional blue collar companies, like, they had a website. That's what they needed. There wasn't much more to it. But now you're right. We're seeing so many more third-party tools involved, or how many different things does it actually take to connect the whole website process for the customer journey, from email marketing campaigns to, how is your social media connected into, how are you accepting payments online? How are you, receiving the inquiries or tracking any sort of online quoting systems that, while it's a great time for businesses because we can't automate so much, we've identified about 300 plus touch points that go into having a business online. And that's not necessarily having an e-commerce business online, right? That's literally just having a business presence online. There's 300 digital touch points. And so that's really, I think most business owners can name the better part of maybe 20 if we're getting lucky, but not all of them. And so that's really where we started doing more and more of the digital asset protection and the ownership mapping framework to start to identify and put these things all into place, as you're saying.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because basically pretty much small business to big business, we all are working to have that presence online. And it's so important, again, for the infrastructure of our business. And I don't think that, that people have thought about it that way, as it being a true pillar. So you talk about the 7 pillars, right? Can you walk us through and just introduce us to those 7 pillars, and maybe what are the top 2 or 3 that are usually in the worst shape? So let's start with the 7.
Absolutely. So with the 7 pillars, one, that's just kind of where we start to categorize how those 300 digital touch points come together. And they fall under the 7 pillars. And that starts to be, how's your domain? Where's your domain? How's it hosted? Where's your website? What does all that look like? And then it goes into more of the online marketing. What are you using? Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok? What does all of that look like? Are you tracking anything? How are we tracking KPIs, analytics? And what we notice is a lot of times business owners think that they have ownership of these, or I know the logins. Those are the 2 responses that we start to hear, but they haven't really fully read the vendor contract to realize that if they were to stop Google ads, they're probably not going to get the ad account to come with them. The vendor's going to take that with them. So while yes, they're running ads, they haven't fully identified who's the owner of this. We've seen websites get built and it's like, well, you can't take the content, that's ours. That's not how it should be. But if that's how it's written in the contract, that's the contract you signed. And so now while you want to rebuild your site someplace else or carry the content and everything to a new platform, you might be stuck with limitations. And it used to be an old school way. We still hear it on a regular basis, though, of like, no, that's the web developer's property. And it just kind of baffles us. It's never been the way that I've ran Tree Ring Digital. I've always ran it as you paid us for a service, you get that as return, right? Like, so for us, it's more natural that ownership should be across the board, but we've seen domains held hostage by vendors that bought them on behalf of. Contract went south. And now, like, no, I own it. It's in my account. I'm not handing it over. And it's like, okay,
Wait a minute.
Yeah. The business owner, though, should have asked the right questions ahead of time to make sure that they do, in fact, own it. So these are just things that we see. So that kind of gets us into, like some of the pillars. And then we get into brand assets. Do you have the actual copy of your logo? Do you have trademark or IP around any of these things? Do you have a set source where everyone can find the appropriate files, the stock photos that you've paid for, videos and photos, all of that? And then it starts to move into third-party tools. Like we talked about, your CRM systems, your email marketing campaigns, your online payment processing, anything like that starts to fall into how is the website actually working, or just your company and brand in general that's using these tools. You mentioned AI, and we can talk more about that. But like, even there, it's another third-party tool that goes into your digital presence. And we can even look at the valuation of how well is it trained or not trained on your company? How dependent is your company on this tool? And are we taking that to the table when we put the deal together? So you get there, and then you move into more of the recovery and backup. What happens? Who are you going to call? Do you even know who's in charge of? We see a lot of companies, especially after an acquisition, they have no idea. They don't know who to call. They just know something happened, and they're just going to start going through every email they can find attached to some contact and hope one of them can help. That obviously delays the recovery time, though. We had another situation where a client had moved the hosting off of our servers, and then they let the employee go. The owner didn't realize that is what had happened. They thought that it was possibly still hosted with us. And so on the departure, the employee just deleted the entire site immediately within, 2-3 minutes, thousands of dollars worth of a website gone. And so, yeah, we get this panic call from the client going, what do we do? What happened? What's going on? I'm like, we have it all in writing here. They said, take it off of your server, shut it down. We're not going to renew all of these things. But that's the hard part even on our side, is like, did the owner know that that's what happened? And so we really want to focus on what is that recovery plan? How do we make sure that your business isn't, impacted, not just for hours, but for days, for months, that's not happening. And then from there, we move into compliance and privacy policies, all the legal stuff that go into, are you following the right disclaimers, especially if we're in a financial space? I know there's even more disclaimers that we have to put in, HIPAA, all of that. So we start tracking that. So as you can see, just even with the 7 pillars, there's a lot more that goes into it than just, do I know how to log into my website hosting and emails?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think that the top 2 or 3 pillars that are usually in the worst place or the worst shape have to do with how much knowledge and how much delegation, I guess, it's not even delegation, it's how much trust as an owner, you've put into a team of people. And as this grows, it grows so quickly that the team of people and the specialization continues to multiply.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
it's
just vendor turnover. Hey, we're leaving this one, starting to a next one, but like, did they create a new account? Were you able to pick up on the one they left off?
Yeah.
Who set up the Facebook profile? Was that, an intern that came in at some point and now they've left, but they didn't entirely know. It's not their fault. They didn't know that this is the email address that should be used or how to put people, as admins onto the account so that when they leave. But Facebook doesn't tell us who's in charge of that account. It just says the account exists. And so then it's like, all right, now we have to go all the way back through all the years to figure out who's the one that set this up, or at least maybe hopefully has some sort of admin access. And that can impact a deal. If you go in and say, hey, we've got this really strong social presence, but we don't actually know how to do anything with it, they're going to start saying, well, we got to rebuild. We got to start, competing against ourselves basically with a new profile. This is going to take more time and energy than we thought. So, we do want to start looking at a different direction or lowering the valuation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I can just imagine the headaches coming for people. And, being in my shoes, building a business where in the beginning we didn't even need or really have a website. It wasn't even a big deal to have that, to now evolving to where 300 touch points, and it's so complicated. And again, is one of, as you just mentioned, one of your infrastructure assets that becomes a part of your sale price or a part of your transition price. And I also think of, we do at the Transition Strategists, we do a lot of long haul strategies for people to walk through. What do they have to do in order to prepare and become exit ready? And one of the things that you help people do is become exit ready with regard to their digital assets, and also reduce the risk of the loss in basic operation. So if you're transitioning it from you to potentially an internal person, how do you make sure that that business is in really good shape, giving those people the best opportunity to run it into the future well?
Yeah, you spend so much time investing into a well-oiled machine, right? And that's what you're going to the table with and, wanting to be exit ready for, and whatever the capacity that looks like, whether you're handing it to a key employee or whether you're selling it to a different company, like that's the value that you've been building all of this time, is like, we understand how we have this marketing effort working. It gets into the email marketing campaign, and from the email marketing campaign, we nurture it through here. We know what our conversion rate is on our website. We know we've got this so time tested. But if one piece of that breaks during a transition, the whole company can start to go down, or at least get kind of even off track and having to we thought we could have gone right back to market as soon as we bought. No, instead, we're going to have to slow down and put 6 months into rebuilding this infrastructure. And then we can have this, moving as an asset again. And that's not what they're looking for when they're acquiring. And so, or even as they take over, they didn't want the headache, if they're taking over the company, they knew what they were doing. They saw what you built and they knew that they could keep that part running smoothly. And so anytime those hiccups happen, it's usually cost the company way more. We've seen anything from $20,000 fix to $250,000 fix, just depending on, where and what piece of that is impacted. And so that's where I say, I think a lot of people don't think it's really gonna devalue the business, or it's not really giving them that space to change the price, but it can. And the savvy buyers are going to know that too. The savvy buyers are going to know, if you don't have this, this is what it's going to take for my team or somebody else to put this back into place. And I don't want to, I don't even know if I want to acquire something if it's going to take that much legwork.
Absolutely. Yeah, just the concept of build versus buy. And the reason why they're buying typically is because they think they can do more faster by buying than by building it themselves. And so they'll go make that effort to make the purchase and go through the process. So if you had a prescription for a business, how to start to get their digital assets, I would just say safe. right? Because you want them safe for the business. And as you build them to be safe in your journey, likely they're going to then become a higher valued asset in a future transition or a near future transition. So how do we just do best practice? And what's the prescription for getting ready and staying ready?
Yeah. So one thing is we have a like free checklist that you can start with, which is really just our digital asset assessment, if you will, where you can go through, you can download that. That's at truingdigital.com/transition strategists. And from there, it's just kind of more the checklist of the 7 pillars broken down into a little bit basic terms of let's start. Do we at least know these things so that you can kind of assess as a business owner, where am I even starting from? What does that look like? So that's kind of one of the best places to start getting a grasp and an understanding of what does digital asset protection even mean? What is that, right?
Yeah.
After that, we recommend our ownership mapping framework. And with that, that's where we deep dive into outlining who is ownership of all of these, what are all of the assets that go into it, are you in compliance with the various aspects? So everything in that 7 pillars that we just spoke about, we go through that in our ownership mapping framework. And that's really good on the exit ready side. We really do even put that more into like the exit ready due diligence piece, where ideally at the end of that, you're coming out with the paperwork needed to go to the deal table during due diligence and say, yeah, I have, the past 6 months or 6 years of analytic data to show you our ad spend and how it relates to our website traffic. Yeah, I understand exactly what our conversion rate is on our website. Absolutely. I know that I do, in fact, own the domain name and it's not attached to a previous business co-owner. I do know like all of these answers. And yes, we are in compliance. You're not going to run into any issues with that after the transition. All of that is actually building a ton of trust also. If you can get to that point in the due diligence, they're going to feel much more like, wow, they didn't cut any corners. They've been doing this right. This should be a really smooth transition for us. I have no hesitations. Let's continue moving forward with this company. So that's really what our goal is. What we see is digital is the kind of the last piece that's touched in due diligence. And so that's where I think we see it derail deals so often is like, great, you've gotten through the legal, you've gotten through the finances, you've gotten through the operation. And then they're like, oh, right, we should also ask these questions. And no one throughout the whole process has been working with the business owner to prepare them for those questions. So that's what
Yeah.
the ownership mapping framework is going to do. And then after that, we just recommend digital continuity management where we just keep up with it. If you have turnover, you just have to email and say, hey, this is, employees no longer with us. How do we change the associated email accounts? Hey, the credit card is no longer, working and we had to shut it down for fraud. What credit cards are attached to that so that nothing in our system goes down. So now we're really there in those pieces to say, you're no longer going out alone. Even if it's a different vendor that's running your Google ads, at least you can come to us and say, who do we talk to? Why is this happening? And we can say, oh, here's the vendor. Here's the person you need to reach out to. You're ready to go. So that's where the digital continuity side starts to step in.
Yeah. So you're truly, in your work and in your vision, you're truly a partner side by side with, and I think of it with the business, right? No matter who the owner is, you're side by side with that business, with the team, helping them to make sure as they go forward that their digital assets remain safe and working properly and supporting the business the way that it needs to be supported.
Yeah, and I think you're correct there. Another piece of that is like ideally the owner is somewhat involved so that they are the ones that are aware of these things. But to your point, we usually are working with some sort of marketing manager, marketing team, someone in that, in that area of the infrastructure that maybe doesn't have a good grasp on websites, but they were hired for marketing. Maybe they have never had to deal with any of the compliance stuff because they've just been running it more of a administrative role on the marketing front or just an administrative in general. And now all of a sudden they're tasked with like, oh, we need to go, or why is this down? Go figure it out. We get that email all the time of my boss just said to email people and try to figure out why this is happening. And it's like, well, thankfully, like you contacted us, we have this, but you can tell they don't know, but the owner doesn't have the time to slow down and figure out why. So they're just tasking it to anybody. And so that's where, again, when you can start to build that relationship, now we can just say, anytime something comes up related to your digital, we'll get you going in the right direction. We'll be able to help answer those questions. And if we don't know, we're going to tell you exactly who to contact to get to that answer as quickly as we can. Even with our digital continuity, we say, offer a 0 downtime guarantee that if you're running on that with us, your website will, or like your business will never be offline for more than 4 hours, because we're going to know exactly where things go, what's going on, who to contact, and you're not going to see that lag of, oh, we forgot to renew something. Who knew that our CRM credit card expired? And now the whole thing is down.
Yeah. And what a great partner to have. What a great, in a way, insurance policy to have, if you want to think of it that way too. But, or a live community insurance policy that is there to help you when you really need help and you don't know where to go. So many of the people that we work with, the transitioners, typically are like 50, 60, 70. We have one client who's just turned 80.
Oh,
so, yeah, which is great. It's great. But again, some of the knowledge that is required, I'm a big, big, big believer in experts in different areas. And you truly, you truly portray that as an expert in the digital assets area for keeping them safe.
Yeah, well, thank you. And also for that, though, to your point, I mean, the amount of stuff that is moving to AI bots, the amount of stuff that's like, we're not even going to give you a single way to contact a human. A lot of times when we get the phone call and I'm on it, they're just like, a human. They don't really care past that. They're just like, finally someone, and there's that happy balance in the tech space, especially as I've been in it for so long, to see that transition. And it's super frustrating when you're starting to use all these third-party tools and no one wants to get on a live chat anymore. No one wants to be giving out phone numbers. And it's just like, we're not there yet. We can't do that. So it is extremely frustrating to a business owner. It's extremely frustrating when those things come up. And so to your point, I think that's something that people really, really appreciate is it's not just, hey, I have an answer. It's a human that knows the answer, that understands my business and understands the importance and why this is like so urgent for me specifically and why we need to get this under control immediately.
Absolutely. Well, and just, if you're getting a call like that, the company, the owner, they are not in a great situation. It is, there is something on fire that needs to be fixed right now. And with a little bit of thought into it and the intentionality, because in our work, as people come in and they go through the Evolve program and they walk through the building of a strategy to not only understand what they want, but prepare their successor, prepare the business, prepare the team, all of those different pieces, transition knowledge, because how do you transition all this knowledge? Let's say the owner is engaged and maybe heavily and highly engaged in this with the quote unquote ownership of the assets. In that transition, how do you transition all the knowledge that the owner has to do that, and to manage it well, because it is, and I think will continue to be a growing asset inside of the business. I don't think it's going down in value. I think it's going up in value, and it'll be a greater and greater value component of a business going forward. So there's a knowledge transition in just the ownership of the assets and how to handle them.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we go into is like, do you have a policy when people are setting up new accounts to use so that no matter what that transition looks like, that's in place? I know, we were also sharing another story is we had a client that was a long-term client of ours. He referred his son to us. So we were like, okay, great. Like we brought that on. And I've just always been the type to just document everything. And so, as we were building this relationship with his son, we were putting everything down and like, okay, we know how to do this. Okay, we've got access to this. We've got ourselves set up, not delegated access on that. So we had really going through this process, if you will. And then all of a sudden I get the phone call that the son passed away. And he had about 4 or 5 different employees, attached to it. And it's one thing to be going through the grieving and the loss of, but 2, he was more concerned of like, are the employees going to drain the bank account? Because I don't know what they do and don't have access to as far as Stripe. You can go in and request a loan through Stripe as long as you've got the right access. And that's what the employees had, because that's what part of their role and job was. So it's like, how do we make sure that now we're not also putting some sort of random debt on the company because of this passing? How do we make sure that there was also files that we had to recover from the computer of service they were selling, and only the son is the one who had access to the core raw video files? So it was like, how do we work through and put all these pieces in place to put the puzzle back together? And yeah, I mean, I think it took us the better part of 6 months to work through all of the different pieces that went into running that business, even though we actually had a ton of it under our, ownership. There were these little nuances where we didn't have the computer. We have no idea how to get into, his personal email account to locate some of this stuff. So we had to go down that path. But that was also just kind of a testament to, like, we're not going to stop and we're not going to give up. Like, what are the options? We want to make sure we exhaust everything. But to your point, how do we not ever find ourselves in that situation? How do we make sure that, yes, you've built this legacy, you want to hand it off to somebody, your family, someone else, whatever that looks like, that if something should have happened, how do we just make sure the company isn't just completely at a halt and now worth $0 and you can't do anything with everything you've been spending the last, whether it be 5, 20, 50 years building? How do we really make sure that it's even, going to stay that legacy and in place should something happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, moral of the story is, in what I just heard and reflecting back, is stay on top of this. Think about and reframe your digital assets as a large component of your value of your company, knowing that it'll continue to grow, and then treat it just like another component of your transition roadmap, just another piece that needs to be handed off. And I think of it kind of like, the accounting needs to be handed off because it's the blood of the company and the cash flow. And how do you deal with that? Now, digital assets, I think, are becoming as important as money, as important as the flow of money, is the flow of, the digital communication and how things flow through your company, both in and out.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If your emails are down for any reason for, 4 hours to 5 days, I mean, how much of the finance that you just outlined is actually at a halt? And how much is that impacting, the business overall? An online system and online appointment tool. If you can't accept appointments, like, how much money are we losing? So to your point, the finances matter, but I don't think people are realizing how much of the finances are dependent on that online infrastructure to make it happen, more so now than ever in companies too.
That's right. Yeah, there's a big shift that's happened over the last year. I'm going to say 10 years plus, but it's happening at a higher and higher rate, faster and faster, and people are adopting things faster and faster. And, COVID, it happened. And because of that, I think we accelerated so much into people accepting the use of digital interaction in general, like Zoom, like podcasts, like, scheduling, all of that. It just happened. It's easy.
I mean, we instantly went from, maybe a handful of tools to a dozen tools, and it's just changing every single day with, the advancement of all the other tech coming out, AI, the SaaS tools, et cetera, that there's more now than ever. And we're just at a really fast speed too. So it's easy to lose track of it all. We signed up for another account, didn't realize it, or we were testing it out, didn't realize the trial ended. Next thing you know, you've got some random credit card charge for the past 6 months that you didn't know you were paying. And it's just money out the door. How do we get a better grasp around what that looks like so we know why the money is coming in, going out too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, gosh, Paige, this has been incredible. I don't want to leave people with a fear, right? But I can feel a sense of urgency to incorporate this kind of thinking into your transition roadmap as an owner, successor, transitioner. If you're working on that right now, I can see a sense of urgency and a high priority to start to incorporate that into this journey as a component of knowledge transition, asset transition, and just helping to mitigate some risk that you might have in the future as you start to wander through an actual transaction. So, Paige, you're just a wealth of knowledge. I always end, and our time goes so fast always, but I like to end with one thought from you on what you would leave with our audience. If you could leave them with one thought, what would be the most important thing you would help them with?
I think you can just get a grasp on it. I really had to think about it even when I started looking at like trust and estate planning and what do I do with my company. I'm the one who knows where a lot of stuff is and what happens should something happen to me, unexpectedly. And so, even a little bit before some of the exit side, it's like you should always be ready. You should always have that digital plan in place so that no matter what happens, whether it is the succession, whether it's the exiting, whether, it be prepared and don't let it delay because it will really, cost a lot more in the long run than just getting a grasp of it now.
Absolutely. So, Paige, if people would like to get a hold of you to learn more, to dive in deeper, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way to do that would be to find me on LinkedIn, so Paige Wiese, or like I said, you can also go to treeringdigital.com/transition strategists, and that will also give you the download the checklist just to start evaluating yourself of where are you at with everything, what does that look like, and a little bit more deeper level than everything I've just spoken about here, because it's a lot. It's a lot of information in a short amount of time for sure.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And it seems as though it's like a spider web, right? Yep. And you keep the spider web intact and beautiful and working and yeah, all of that when it's a pretty fragile web, or it can be, with one spot that goes out. So, yeah. Anyway, Paige, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing so openly and vulnerably just what you do. And congratulations. What a cool thing that you do for people. So
thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Transition Roadmap. If you're ready to start shaping your own transition strategy, which I'm really hoping that you are, our team at the Transition Strategists would love to offer you a free discovery strategy session where you can explore what might be good for you and just some new ideas. We've got a new perspective and a new approach with people first. And a lot of what we talk about, nobody has ever really done before. So I want to encourage you to think about that and to go to transitionstrategist.com/discovery to schedule your call if you are even curious. It's free, no pressure. We'd love to talk to you. And by the way, if you're a successor or if you've got one in your business, you'll also want to check out for sure Your Next Gen Friend, A Successor's Guide to Business Transition. It's a podcast that's hosted by my successor, Andrea Carpenter. She's incredible. And this one is specifically designed for rising leaders in family businesses. So thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on the Business Transition Roadmap.